The morning sun cast long shadows across London's busy streets as Sarah Chen adjusted her designer backpack, checking her reflection in her phone's front-facing camera. At 23, she had already amassed a decent following on social media, with her travel content gaining popularity among young adventurers who dreamed of exploring the world. Sarah wasn't always a social media influencer. Just 2 years ago, she was working as a barista in Vancouver, serving lattes and dreaming of something bigger. Her transformation began when a simple hiking video went viral, capturing the attention of thousands. Since then, she had turned her passion for travel into a growing brand, with sponsorships from mid-tier travel companies and clothing brands filling her inbox. London was different from her previous destinations. The city's ancient architecture and modern buzz created a perfect backdrop for her content. This was her first time in England, and she was determined to make it count. Her hotel room, though small and overpriced, offered a decent view of the city's skyline. That morning, she had spent nearly an hour preparing her outfit, a carefully chosen combination of trendy and practical, ripped jeans, a cropped white sweater, and comfortable yet fashionable walking shoes. Time to make some magic, Sarah muttered to herself, scrolling through her planned itinerary. Her phone showed several notifications from her latest post in Paris, but she ignored them. Today was about creating new content, not managing old posts. The streets were already filling with tourists as Sarah made her way through the heart of London. She stopped occasionally to capture short clips of red double-decker buses and black cabs, knowing her followers loved these quintessential London scenes. Each location was a potential goldmine for engagement, and Sarah knew exactly how to frame her shots for maximum impact. As she walked, Sarah noticed other influencers doing the same thing, posing, filming, adjusting their hair, and checking their angles. The competition was fierce, and simply posting pretty pictures wasn't enough anymore. Her followers craved excitement, something different, something that would make them stop scrolling and hit that like button. "Excuse me," Sarah called out to a passing local, "which is the quickest way to Buckingham Palace?" The middle-aged woman pointed her in the right direction, and Sarah's eyes lit up with anticipation. The palace was her main target for the day, and she had heard stories about the famous Queen's Guard, their strict demeanor, their impressive uniforms, and most importantly, their magnificent horses. During her research, Sarah had watched dozens of videos featuring tourists interacting with the guards. Most were respectful, some were silly. Sarah positioned herself carefully among the crowd of tourists, her water bottle half hidden behind her back. The mounted guard sat motionless atop his magnificent black horse, both of them the perfect picture of royal discipline. The horse's coat gleamed in the morning sun, its muscles rippling slightly as it shifted its weight. Other tourists around her were busy taking standard photos, their excited chatter filling the air. Children pointed at the guard's tall bearskin hat, while parents tried to capture the perfect family photo. Sarah noticed an elderly couple speaking in German, the woman clutching a guidebook as her husband adjusted his camera settings. "This has to be perfect," Sarah whispered to herself, pulling up her video app once again. She had already decided that a simple photo wouldn't be enough. She needed action, something unexpected that would make her content stand out. The water bottle felt cool against her palm as she planned her next move. The guard remained stoic, his red uniform bright against the palace's backdrop. Sarah had read about these guards. They were real soldiers, not just tourist attractions. Their horses underwent extensive training to remain calm in all situations. This particular horse was massive up close, its presence both magnificent and slightly intimidating. A young boy near Sarah dropped his ice cream cone, the sudden clatter causing several tourists to jump. The horse's ear twitched, but otherwise, both mount and rider remained perfectly still. This small reaction gave Sarah an idea. If such a tiny sound could make the horse react, what would a splash of water do? She began her recording, narrating quietly to her phone. "Hey guys, welcome back to Sarah's Travel Adventures. I'm here at Buckingham Palace, and you won't believe what I'm about to do." Her heart raced with excitement and a touch of nervousness. The thrill of potentially creating viral content overshadowed any doubts about the wisdom of her planned actions. A palace guard on foot passed nearby, his boots clicking sharply against the pavement. Sarah waited until he was well past before continuing with her plan. She had noticed the warning signs about maintaining a respectful distance from the guards, but like many young content creators before her, She chose to interpret these as flexible guidelines rather than strict rules. Moving closer to the mounted guard, Sarah kept her phone steady, trying to find the perfect angle. The horse was even more impressive up close. Its muscles were like steel under its gleaming coat, and its eyes seemed to follow her movement. The guard appeared to be looking straight ahead, but Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that he was aware of her presence. Several other tourists watched her curiously as she positioned herself. A woman with a stroller shook her head disapprovingly, pulling her children back a few steps. An American teenager pointed at Sarah, whispering something to his friend while pulling out his own phone to record. The morning had grown warmer, and Sarah could feel sweat forming on her palms. The water bottle was slick in her grip as she prepared for her moment. In her mind, she already imagined the video going viral. Influencer's hilarious palace guard prank. She could almost see the view count climbing, the comments section exploding with reactions. Just a little closer, she thought, edging forward. The horse's nostrils flared slightly, perhaps sensing her approach. The guard remained motionless, but there was a tension in the air that Sarah chose to ignore. Her followers would love this. It would be unexpected, shocking, and totally different from the usual tourist photos. Sarah raised her water bottle slightly, still trying to keep it hidden from direct view. She was close enough now to see the intricate details of the guard's uniform, the shine of the horse's bridle, and the impressive muscles of the animal's neck. The horse's eyes, dark and intelligent, seemed to watch her with growing awareness. What Sarah failed to notice was the supple shift in the horse's stance, the slight tension in its powerful legs, or the almost imperceptible tightening of the guard's grip on the reins. These were warning signs that would have been obvious to someone more familiar with horses or military protocol, but Sarah was too focused on her phone screen, too caught up in her quest for the perfect viral moment. As she prepared to execute her plan, several nearby tourists had their phones out, inadvertently becoming witnesses to what would soon unfold. The stage was set for a lesson that would teach Sarah the true meaning of respect, responsibility, and the consequences of reckless actions for social media fame. Without any further hesitation, Sarah made her move. In one swift motion, she raised the water bottle and squeezed, sending a stream of cold water directly at the horse's face. "Surprise!" she exclaimed, her voice full of misplaced excitement as she tried to capture the perfect angle on her phone. Time seemed to slow down as the water arsed through the air. Several gasps emerged from the crowd of tourists, and someone shouted, "No." The water droplets sparkled in the sunlight for a brief moment before striking the horse's face, some droplets hitting its sensitive nostrils and eyes. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. The horse, startled by the sudden assault of cold water, did what any surprised animal would do. It reared up. Its powerful front legs lifted off the ground, its muscles tensing as it rose into the air. The movement was swift and powerful, displaying the raw strength of the military-trained animal. Sarah's triumphant smile vanished instantly. Her phone nearly slipped from her fingers as she stumbled backward. Within minutes, Sarah found herself being escorted through a side entrance of the palace grounds, flanked by 2 security officers. Her phone had been confiscated, and her designer backpack was being carried by a 3rd officer who had joined them. The reality of her situation was beginning to crush her previous confidence. The security office was nothing like the ornate palace rooms tourists dreamed of seeing. Instead, it was a modern, stark space with bright fluorescent lighting and plain white walls. Security cameras blinked silently from corners, and multiple screens displayed various views of the palace grounds. Sarah could see the spot where her incident had occurred on one of the monitors. "Please take a seat, Miss Chen," the senior security officer instructed, gesturing to a chair in front of a desk. His name badge read Officer Harrison, and his expression was a mixture of disapproval and weariness, suggesting this wasn't the first time he'd dealt with tourists causing trouble. Sarah sat down, her legs still shaky from the adrenaline. The chair was uncomfortable, probably intentionally so. Through the office window, she could see other tourists continuing their peaceful visits, taking photos and enjoying their day. Everything she should have been doing instead of causing chaos. "Do you understand the seriousness of what you've just done?" Officer Harrison asked, sitting down across from her. He placed her passport and phone on the desk between them. The phone was still recording, its screen now dark from running so long. Sarah nodded weakly, but the officer continued. "That horse is not a circus animal or a prop for social media. It's a highly trained military horse, and its rider is an active duty soldier. Your actions could have resulted in serious injury to yourself, to other tourists, to the guard, or to the horse. As if to emphasize, the questioning in the security office lasted for 3 grueling hours. Sarah provided a detailed statement, her voice trembling as she recounted her foolish decision. Officer Harrison and his team maintained their professional demeanor, but their disappointment was evident in every question they asked. Your actions have violated several regulations, Officer Harrison explained, sliding a document across the desk. This is a formal notice of the infractions. You'll need to pay a fine of £2,500 for endangering a service animal and disrupting official duties. He paused, letting the amount sink in. Additionally, you're banned from all royal properties for the next 5 years. Sarah's face paled as she stared at the figure. The fine would wipe out most of her travel budget and savings. Her sponsored posts and brand deals suddenly seemed very far away. Who would want to work with an influencer who had gone viral for all the wrong reasons? Meanwhile, outside the security office, the incident had taken on a life of its own. Sarah's phone, which had been returned to her but kept in airplane mode at the officer's request, buzzed continuously with notifications as soon as she turned the connectivity back on. Her social media accounts were flooded with messages, most of them negative. We've received statements from several witnesses, the female officer, whose name was Bennett, informed her, including this footage from the mounted guard's body camera. She turned her tablet to show Sarah a close-up view of the horse's reaction. The angle made her actions look even more thoughtless and dangerous. The veterinarian's report had come back, confirming that while the horse wasn't physically harmed, it had shown signs of distress. You're fortunate the horse was so well trained, Officer Bennett added. A less disciplined animal might have caused serious injuries to bystanders. Sarah's phone continued its relentless buzzing. Opening her social media apps revealed the full extent of the damage. Her latest posts were overwhelmed with angry comments, and her follower count was dropping by the minute. Several travel brands she had worked with had already sent emails distancing themselves from her. This incident will be recorded, Officer Harrison continued, stamping several forms. Any future violations of this nature could result in more severe consequences, including possible criminal charges. He slid another form across the desk. You'll need to sign here, acknowledging receipt of the fine and accepting the terms of the property ban. Sarah's hand shook as she signed the document. The signature looked nothing like her usual confident scrawl, a fitting representation of how her carefully crafted influencer image was crumbling around her. A knock on the door interrupted the proceedings. Another officer entered, carrying a tablet. "Sir, you might want to see this," he said quietly, showing something to Officer Harrison. The senior officer's expression grew even more serious. "Miss Chen," he said, turning the tablet toward her, "your incident has made it to several major news websites. Given the current situation, we strongly advise you to avoid the main tourist areas for the remainder of your stay in London." The news articles were brutal. Headlines like "Reckless Influencer Endangers Royal Guard's Horse" and "Social Media Stunt Goes Wrong at Buckingham Palace" were spreading rapidly. Some articles had even dug up her previous content, criticizing her history of pushing boundaries for views. Officer Bennett handed Sarah a card with contact information for the palace's legal department. "You'll receive formal documentation about the fine and ban through email," she explained. "Any questions or appeals must go through the proper channels." As the paperwork was finally completed, Sarah gathered her belongings with shaking hands. Her expensive camera, which she planned to use for capturing London's beauty, now felt like a useless weight in her bag. "You'll be escorted off the premises," Officer Harrison informed her. "Remember, this ban applies to all royal properties. Any attempt to violate it will result in immediate legal action." 2 security officers appeared to guide Sarah out through a side exit, away from the main tourist areas. As they walked, she could still hear the excited chatter of tourists enjoying their visits, taking normal photos, and respecting the boundaries, all the things she should have done. The morning sun was now high in the sky, but for Sarah, it felt like the darkest moment of her travel career. As she was led toward the gates, she caught one last glimpse of a mounted guard in the distance. a stark reminder of how a few seconds of thoughtless action had transformed her London adventure into a costly lesson in respect and responsibility. The aftermath of Sarah's actions spread across the internet like wildfire. By evening, sitting alone in her small hotel room, she watched in horror as her incident became the day's viral sensation, just not in the way she had hoped. Her phone hadn't stopped buzzing since she left the palace, each notification bringing a new wave of criticism. Multiple versions of the video circulated online, captured from different angles by other tourists. The most damaging footage came from an American teenager who had perfectly captured her sneaking up to the horse, the splash of water, and the dangerous aftermath. His caption read, "Watch this influencer mess with the wrong horse #karma." Sarah's social media numbers told a devastating story. Her follower count, which she had carefully built to 100,000 over 2 years, dropped by 20,000 in just one day. Her latest posts were bombarded with angry comments, forcing her to disable them. Even her old content wasn't safe, with critics going through her previous videos to point out other instances of questionable behavior. Dear Ms. Chen, read an email from her largest sponsor, a travel backpack company. In light of recent events, we regret to inform you that we must terminate our partnership agreement effective immediately. Similar messages filled her inbox, brands cutting ties, collaboration offers being withdrawn, and speaking engagements cancelled. The mainstream media had picked up the story too. Several British newspapers ran articles about the incident, using it as an example of social media influencers going too far for content. Tourists at Heartwarming screamed one headline, while another read, "INFLUENCER's policy shame, a new OO for social media." Sarah's phone rang. It was her mother calling from Vancouver. "I just saw the news," her mother said, her voice a mixture of concern and disappointment. "What were you thinking?" Sarah couldn't answer. She had been asking herself the same question all day. Travel bloggers and other influencers, eager to distance themselves from her actions, made public statements condemning what she had done. Some even used her incident as content for their own channels, creating videos about how not to behave at tourist attractions and influencer fails. A notification popped up. Someone had found her LinkedIn profile and professional work history. Comments began appearing on her previous employer's social media pages, forcing her to contact them and apologize for any negative attention they might receive. The £2,500 fine wasn't her only financial worry. Brand deals worth thousands of dollars were cancelled, and future sponsorship opportunities vanished. The carefully planned income stream she had built around her travel content was crumbling, and her emergency flight change fees to return home early would only add to the mounting costs. Sarah attempted to post an apology video, but the response was overwhelmingly negative. Comments accused her of being insincere, of only apologizing because she got caught, and of not understanding the seriousness of her actions. She deleted the video after an hour, but others had already downloaded and reposted it with critical commentary. Tourism websites and travel forums used her story as a warning to others. One popular London tourism blog wrote a detailed article about proper etiquette around the Queen's Guard, using her incident as an example of what not to do. The comment section filled with people sharing their own stories of witnessing disrespectful tourist behavior. Local London tour guides began incorporating her story into their presentations. And this, they would say, pointing to the spot where it happened, is where an influencer learned why we respect the Queen's Guard. Tourists would laugh, take photos, and share the story on their own social media accounts, perpetuating her shame. As night fell over London, Sarah sat on her hotel bed, scrolling through the seemingly endless negative coverage. Her dreams of being a successful travel influencer felt foolish now. The carefully curated image she had built, the persona of an adventurous and carefree traveler, had been shattered by one thoughtless action. Her phone buzzed again, another email from a brand ending their relationship. Sarah finally turned off her phone, unable to bear any more bad news. Through her hotel window, she could see the London skyline, the city lights twinkling in the darkness. It should have been a beautiful sight, worth a perfect Instagram photo. Instead, it felt like a reminder of how quickly everything could fall apart. Tomorrow, she would need to face the consequences of her actions and figure out how to move forward. But for now, alone in her room, Sarah Chen, the influencer who had wanted to go viral, learned the hard way that sometimes the internet's attention is the last thing you want. 1 month after the infamous Buckingham Palace incident, Sarah Chen sat in her small Vancouver apartment, staring at her laptop screen. Her life had changed dramatically since that morning in London. The viral video of her splashing water on the guard's horse had become a cautionary tale, shared in tourism guides and social media etiquette discussions worldwide. The financial impact had been severe. After paying the £2,500 fine, early flight change fees, and losing all her brand partnerships, Sarah had been forced to move to a cheaper apartment and take a part-time job at a local coffee shop. Ironically, the same type of work she'd done before becoming an influencer. Her social media presence had transformed completely. Gone were the carefully filtered travel photos and sponsored content. Instead, Sarah had begun sharing honest reflections about her experience and the lessons she'd learned. Her follower count had stabilized at around 30,000, a fraction of her previous audience. But these followers seemed more genuine, interested in her journey of personal growth rather than travel entertainment. "I've been thinking a lot about responsibility," Sarah wrote in her latest blog post. "Not just as a traveler or content creator, but as a human being. That horse and guard weren't props for my content. They were living beings doing their duty. My actions showed a complete lack of respect for them and for an important cultural institution." The post was part of a series she'd started called Learning from Mistakes, where she shared her experience with younger content creators. She received messages from other influencers thanking her for her honesty and admitting they too had sometimes gone too far in pursuit of viral content. Sarah had also reached out to several equestrian organizations, offering to speak about the importance of respecting animals. One local stable had taken her up on the offer, allowing her to learn about horses and their sensitivity to sudden movements and surprises. The experience had given her a deeper understanding of why her actions at the palace had been so dangerous. The incident had even led to positive changes in the influencer community. Several popular travel accounts now included clear guidelines about respectful behavior at cultural sites, and some tourism boards had started requiring influencers to sign conduct agreements before working with them. Looking back, Sarah said during a small podcast interview, "I realized I had lost sight of what travel content should be about. It's not about creating shocking moments or going viral. It's about sharing genuine experiences and showing respect for the places and people we encounter." Her parents, initially horrified by her actions, had supported her through the transformation. Her mother had helped her find the coffee shop job, and her father had assisted with moving to the cheaper apartment. Their support helped Sarah accept that sometimes taking a step back could be a step in the right direction. The mounted guard's horse, she learned, had fully recovered from the incident and continued its duties at the palace. Sarah had written a formal letter of apology to the Royal Guard unit, acknowledging the disrespect she'd shown to both the horse and its rider. Though she never received a direct response, the act of writing had been an important part of her healing process. As she finished typing her latest blog post, Sarah glanced at the frame hanging on her wall, a printed screenshot of her viral moment, surrounded by the headlines it had generated. It served as a daily reminder of how quickly things could go wrong and the importance of thinking before acting. Her phone buzzed with a notification. A local tourism board had reached out, interested in working with her on a campaign about responsible travel and social media use. It wasn't the glamorous influencer life she'd once dreamed of, but it felt more meaningful, more authentic. Sarah closed her laptop and walked to her window, watching the Vancouver sunset. Her travel dreams weren't over, but they had evolved. Instead of chasing viral moments and likes, she now understood that true influence came from sharing genuine experiences and promoting responsible behavior. The incident at Buckingham Palace would always be part of her story, but it no longer defined her. Instead, it had become the catalyst for personal growth and a new understanding of what it meant to be a responsible content creator in a world where the line between entertainment and respect often became blurred. As the sun disappeared behind the mountains, Sarah Chen, no longer just a reckless tourist seeking viral fame, smiled, knowing that sometimes life's most important lessons come from our biggest mistakes.